10. Big wheel. Hey, wanna be a villain? Great. Just hire another guy to make you a big wheel with machine guns and rocket launchers on it so that you can ride around in it. It's that easy. That's what Jackson Wheel did. Can you guess what he called himself? When he first appeared, Big Wheel used his big wheel to chase and try to kill Rocket Racer while he was mid-fight with Spider-Man. Big Wheel wasn't even facing Spider-Man one-on-one. Just before he was about to get crushed, Spider-Man pulled Racer out of the way and Big Wheel drove right off the side of a building and right into the Hudson River, ending both Jackson Wheel and his big wheel. All of this because Rocket Racer had some blackmail.
Number 9. Rakil. Rakil. I never know how to say this name, but I'm pretty sure it's like Rakil. How do you say Skrull names? That's the question. For some reason, probably because she had been gone so long, Rakil, aka the Skrull Empress, aka Emperor Doric VIII / Hulkling / Teddy Altman's grandmother, was completely unrecognized when she returned. Rakil was revealed to be alive and well, and also sleuthing it up as she impersonated Tanault the Pursuer, an elite member of the Kree forces. And apparently Rakil had been impersonating Tanault so long she had in essence created her persona and basically was her. Rakil had actually been plotting and planning in secret, putting in place all the pieces to bring together the Kree and Skrull Empire, uniting them in an alliance in order to ensure her grandson was the one to rule over the now allied empire, as we saw in Empire. That's the name of the event, so not to be redundant. It was an empire, but it's spelled empire with a Y because it's a whole other thing. And yet when she was revealed in that event to be the one revealed as the Skrull pretending to be Tanault, many Marvel fans actually needed to crack open their comic history books and review just who exactly she was, with many people mistaking her for Veranki, the Skrull Queen. But yes, this is Rakil. She was believed to have died when the Skrull homeworld perished along with her daughter Princess Enel, as their world was devoured by Galactus. She made her first appearance in the Fantastic Four original series in issue 206 and was believed to have perished in issue 257. But she didn't, she was still alive, and then she came back years later and everyone went, who is that? What? Veranki? What? Not Veranki, two different people. Number 8. Kraven the Hunter. You might think you recognize Kraven, but do you really? After all, the current Kraven that you've seen turning up in the current Beyond storyline of the Amazing Spider-Man series is actually none other than Kraven's last son. Well, his last clone son, anyway. This clone of Kraven was given the name of Last Son after he hunted down all his other brothers, his other clone brothers, who had also been trained by Sergei Kravenov, the Kraven himself. As such, this clone of Kraven was named his true heir, and since then has also taken up the mantle of Kraven the Hunter. So while he may look like Kraven, albeit a younger version of him, this Kraven the Hunter is not actually the original. So I guess this is a character that you would recognize, but in so doing you'd be wrong, which means I guess you didn't really recognize him then, did you? This version of Kraven made his first appearance in the current run of The Amazing Spider-Man, which started in 2018, first appearing back in issue 16 as the Last Son. Number 7. Xemnu. Xemnu made his first appearance in Journey into Mystery in issue number 62. We learned that Xemnu was actually a prisoner and a criminal who was retrieved and accidentally revived by a human and electrician named Joe Harper. Xemnu would go on to become known as Xemnu the Living Hulk, and would also prove to be a powerful cosmic, psionic, and all-around bizarre enemy to the Hulk and the Hulk family in time. Initially, he clashed with the original superhero powerhouse team known as the Defenders. Xemnu in his first appearance has brownish or reddish fur, but currently has reappeared in the comics with white fur, making him look kind of like a space yeti. You may not recognize him because you forgot him, or because he's just so weird, or it could be just because of this change when it comes to, you know, his overall fur color. But yeah, he's got different, I guess he dyed his fur? I don't know. What happened there? Number 6. Norman Osborn. Well, you might currently recognize Norman Osborn in terms of his appearance. When it comes to his actions and his alignment, you might not. And in modern comics, Norman has also gone through a couple dramatic redesigns and makeovers in recent history. At one point, Norman gets plastic surgery to completely change his facial appearance, reinventing himself as Mason Banks and becoming the head of Alchemax. There's even an unmasked point where we were all kind of like, wait, who's that? And then he's like, I changed my face, but it's me, Norman Osborn, aka also Mason Banks. He also has been the head of Hammer and his own Dark Avengers, and for a time posed as their version of Iron Man, tarnishing the mantle of Iron Patriot, and more recently, a depowered Norman bonded with the Carnage symbiote, allowing himself to use the Goblin Serum once more, but ultimately being driven insane by that whole experience and believing himself to actually be prime Carnage host and serial killer Cletus Cassidy. Now sane again, however, and seemingly purified by the Sin Eater, currently in the comics, Norman is on a path of redemption, having gained a new lease on life and being cured of his usual villainous intentions. Or so it would seem. I never trust Norman, but that's what's up currently. Number 10. Deadpool. Deadpool has gone through phases where he was fully cured of his power set and even pretty once more in the comics, like back during Daniel Way's Deadpool run, looking completely normal but without his healing factor. But the most startling shift when it comes to Deadpool's appearance has to be between his on-screen adaptations. That's right, we're talking about the comparison between Deadpool's cinematic debut in the X-Men Origins Wolverine film and his own self-titled film franchise. Although oddly enough, both roles feature him played by Ryan Reynolds. The two adaptations could not be more different. Thankfully in Deadpool 2, Wade manages to fix Cable's temporal dial. Using this device to time travel, Wade is not only able to save Vanessa, who initially died at the beginning of that film, but is also able to clean up the timelines by killing the previous version of himself, who is also known as Weapon 11. It should also be noted that in X-Men Origins Wolverine, Deadpool appeared fully as a villain, as opposed to the lovable mess of an anti-hero we've come to know him as within his own film franchise. Kindred. Kindred is a Spider-Man villain who was first introduced in the 2018 series of Amazing Spider-Man in issue 1. Kindred itself is a demon from hell who used to be human and seems to have had a close relationship with Peter Parker in life. However, what we didn't know for a long time was just who Kindred's true identity was. We simply knew the villain wanted revenge on Pete and on Norman Osborn, and that they had demonic powers in addition to having 2 pet centipedes, which Kindred often uses to assist them and do their bidding. Recently, Kindred's true identity was revealed to be that of Harry Osborn, but some fans are still hesitant to take this reveal at face value, believing it could be a misdirect and that we may still not yet know Kindred's true identity. So many people have so many theories. And before we move on to our number 8 spot, just a reminder, if you love us like we love you, show it to us by giving this video a thumbs up, and thank you for doing so. Number 8. The Griever at the end of all things. So I always want to call this villain the Griever at the end of the universe, but that must be because I'm a huge Hitchhiker's Guide fan, and that's just bubbling back to the surface in my mind. But it's not the Griever at the end of the universe, it's the Griever at the end of all things. The Griever at the end of all things was a new villain who showed up and seemingly killed Molecule Man, proving how powerful and scary she was as early as her first appearance. I gotta say, I think her design is cool, but I'm kinda disappointed that she hasn't resurfaced in any Fantastic Four issues since her first fight with the FF team. The fight was so epic that the Fantastic Four actually had to call in a ton of backup, calling on temporary and rotating members of the team to join them, and finally revealing after the events on Battleworld and the recreation of the multiverse that they actually weren't dead as all their fellow heroes were made to believe, but were actually alive and rebuilding everything in secret. So that let that cat out of the bag.
And coming in at number 7, Voltoom, Earth 15. Making his first appearance in Green Lantern Annual Volume 5, Issue 1 back in 2012, also known as the First Lantern. So like I said, he's from the future on Earth 15 in the year 3079, and after his world was on the brink of destruction, him and his mother used the newly discovered emotional electromagnetic spectrum, which is a multiversal force powered by all life in the multiverse. Then they used this power to create the Travel Lantern, and then Voltoom left to find safety while his mother stayed behind and unfortunately, in superhero fashion, died by being crushed by a building right as he left. So he traveled for weeks through space and time in desperate hopes to find something to save his home world. So he goes to Earth 17 and uses the spectrum to resurrect plant life. Cool, not much more to do here, let's go next. He tries Earth 47, then they use the spectrum to create nice music. Cool, and next he went to Earth 3 where he met a sorcerer named Mordu, in which he creates a power ring out of a piece of his soul. And that ring of course being called the Ring of Voltoom. He finally found Earth 0 where he acted as the law and order. Eventually Voltoom's mind was corrupted from the spectrum and he becomes insane and tries to kill the Malthusians, who had created a great heart battery beforehand. Not cool Voltoom, more like not cool tomb. Nah, tried.
Number 6. Dark Carnage. Dark Carnage is like Cletus Cassidy but dead, and brought back to life using the Grendel symbiote and then turned into a towering skeletal monster that is hungry for your spine. Well, maybe not your spine specifically, but if you bonded with a symbiote ever, alive or dead, he's hungry for that spine. It's finger licking good. Delicious spines. Dark Carnage was sort of the final phase of Cletus Cassidy, who sought to awaken Null by gathering all the codices from within all those beings who had ever bonded with a symbiote. Doing so would awaken the Dark God, which was just the kind of chaotic party Cassidy was all about. In attempting to do this, he perished, but was ultimately successful as Null is now awake and headed for Venom and Earth. Cletus may be gone as a result, but the villain has died many times and returned in many different incarnations, such as this new one, Dark Carnage. I'm excited to see if he comes back again, and when he does, just which version of Carnage we'll see next. Maybe some kind of dark immortal Carnage. Number 5. Punchline. So Punchline has to be one of my favorite of the newest villains we've seen. I didn't want to like her when she was announced, especially as I thought she was going to be like some new younger version of Harley Quinn, which I didn't really think that we needed. But then I met Punchline, and I gotta say, I like Alexis. She's okay by me. Punchline's real name is Alexis K, and we learned her backstory in the Joker 80th anniversary special. She sought out the Joker believing that his ideology matched or at least suited her own. She has displayed some pretty sweet chemistry and toxicology skills, making Batman his own special version of the Joker Venom. How nice. Which tormented him through most of the Joker War story, and has proven how deadly she can be with her stilettos when she managed to land a life-threatening hit on Harley Quinn. I really hope we get more Punchline in the near future. I was pleasantly surprised by how different and interesting she is in comparison to Harley Quinn, and I also just love her character design. Punchline first appeared in Batman Volume 3 in issue 89. Number 10. Red Goblin. Red Goblin is the amalgamation of the Carnage symbiote, combined with Norman Osborn's Green Goblin. When you mix a blood-fused symbiote like Carnage together with the insane Green Goblin, you get Red Goblin, a pretty fearsome foe to be reckoned with. Spider-Man had to renounce his mantle to protect his family and fight Red Goblin as Peter Parker, and had to also call in backup to defeat this epic version of Norman Osborn introduced a few years back. This whole experience as well severely messed with Norman's mind, and later resulted in him believing that he was in fact Carnage, aka Cletus Cassidy, and was not at all Norman Osborn, forgetting all about that life until another mysterious villain, Kindred, gave him back his sanity. Thanks, Kindred, that's so nice of you. Number 9.
Number 9. Crime Master. Why are there so many people who have no powers of any kind on Spider-Man's enemy list? This guy just walks around with a gun. That's it! He's another one of the many crime bosses in Marvel's New York, and I guess in that respect he chose a very fitting name. He is a criminal, and he has sorta mastered it. Usually, he employs others to do his dirty work for him, although he did partner with the Green Goblin for a short while before being shot and killed. He has come back from death multiple times under multiple different identities, which kinda made it hard for fans to follow who he is, even if they cared in the first place. Number 8. The Living Brain. Okay, correct me if I'm wrong here, but isn't a brain just kinda living by default? Like, if it's an alive human being, isn't it technically a living brain? This guy isn't living or a brain, I'm so confused! Okay, I'm gonna cut Marvel some slack here because the Living Brain is actually older than almost all of the main Marvel villains. He came before even the Green Goblin. He was created as a machine that could solve any problem, but malfunctioned after two guys got in a little scuffle and it went on a rampage until it was stopped by Spider-Man. It's been used by other smaller criminals, but was always stopped by Spider-Man. But hey, it eventually found steady work as a lab assistant and even saved the Spid on a few occasions. So there's that at least. Number 7, Big Man. I ain't got the facilities for that, big man. He really didn't. Frederick Foswell was a reporter at the Daily Bugle, and well, he was a little guy. Except when he wasn't. You see, Foswell was a master of disguise, and he used a costume that gave him a nice little height boost in order for him to become aptly named Big Man. From this stature, he can now ride the adult roller coasters, reach the top shelf, and be the head of the crime gang, the Enforcers. Spider-Man works with the guy though, so unsurprisingly he was caught and incarcerated for a time. But Jonah gave him his job back afterwards, which is nice. He ended up dying in front of a bullet to save Jonah, so at least he wasn't all bad. Number 6, Black Fox. This one is a little sad. See, Black Fox is basically just a jewel thief who has had a very long career, seeing how he is now an old man. Just a regular jewel thief? Oh, why is this a problem for Spider-Man? It's not. It's really not. But you see, the problem for Spider-Man is that being an old man, Black Fox heavily reminds Peter of his Uncle Ben, which meant that Peter couldn't help but have a soft spot for the guy. He would let Black Fox go multiple times. I mean, I get it. I respect it. But Peter realized his weakness and stopped easing up on the old guy, finally throwing him in the slammer. While he isn't exactly threatening to anyone, he is the mentor of Black Cat, which does give him some notoriety. Number 5, Mirage. What's the best way to stop a robber? I know. Drop a chandelier on him. Wow, yeah, I guess that works. Mirage is a robber, but not just any robber. Oh, no. He and his gang had a specialty for robbing weddings. Honestly, who's expecting that? I mean, I wouldn't be. I'd be so surprised, I just give him my money, you know? He made a bad choice though, when he decided to rob the wedding of Ned Leeds and Betty Brant, where none other than Peter Parker was in attendance. Peter used his web shooters to turn off all the lights and don his spider suit. The day was saved when Spider-Man dropped the whole chandelier on Mirage, defeating him. Ouch. Number 4, the Spot. Could you imagine that the first time you reveal yourself to a hero, they just drop on the floor laughing at you? And on top of that, it's in front of Kingpin, one of the biggest crime lords in Marvel. It would be super embarrassing, except when you totally win and make them look dumb. Way to go, man. The Spot, yes, that's his name, had the power to create interdimensional portals, big and small, which he used to defeat Spider-Man and Black Cat the first time they encountered him. But only the first time. See, the Spot can only create as many portals as he has spots on his body, throwing them wherever he wants until he runs out, which he did in this second encounter with Spidey. And then he lost. Pretty badly. He's appeared here and there since, but he never really posed a threat to anyone, like anyone at all. But he did create the failed group, the Spider-Man Revengeance Squad, with other minor characters that lasted like 2 seconds. Hold up. I gotta stop you right there.
Number 4, Horticulture. Horticulture have to be some of my favorite of the newest villains and villain groups to surface. They are a group of elderly women and botanists who are focused on preserving the planet, focusing on returning it to a more pristine state. In other words, they want to make sure people stop messing everything up by taking control of everyone's food source, in essence controlling plant life and crops, in order to decide who gets to live and kinda who gets to die. As of right now, there are 4 women who are part of the group that we know of: Lily, Edith, Opal, and Augusta. They also made a brilliant and hilarious appearance in the limited Empire X-Men series, which, by the way, if you haven't read, is pretty hilarious and great, and I do recommend it. You don't really have to read Empire to enjoy it either, you just need to know the general plot of that event to enjoy the story of this 4-issue series featuring my fave new villains, Horticulture.
Number 3, Gotham Girl, aka Claire Clover. She made her debut in DCU Rebirth issue 1 in 2016. Her and her brother Hank both traded in years of their lives for superpowers. So they can either live 2 years at Superman's level, or live a few hours with godlike levels, which is really interesting. If you had this power, which way would you go? Let us know in the comments, because I'm curious. So Batman ended up taking Claire and Hank under his wing, but unfortunately, Psycho Pirate's mind manipulation ended up getting the better of him. Hank ended up using all of his life force just to defeat the Justice League. After his death, Claire wasn't doing too well. Batman even told her his real identity and how he sometimes likes to talk to his dead mom as well. How lovely, what a nice little bonding moment. Now, by the name of this list, you won't be too shocked to hear that she had also been secretly working with Bane to break Batman on a psychological level. Not cool.
Number 2, the Viscora. The Viscora are a mysterious alien race that made a brief appearance in Cable Volume 4 Issue 5 as part of the Ten of Swords event. We run into them on the Sword headquarters space station known as Peak 7. It seems the Viscora swiftly invaded Sword's orbital HQ and within 10 minutes had pretty much decimated almost the entire crew. We know this from the log featured in the issue. Those few surviving crew had no other option but to completely shut down the station's power in order to prevent the Viscora from progressing any further with their invasion. To prevent anyone from potentially awakening the station or the Viscora, they didn't send out any SOS calls at the time of powering everything down, and essentially just kind of disappeared. Opal Luna Saturnine was the one who compelled Cable and his parents, Marvel Girl and Cyclops, to awaken the station once more. Though her motives remain unknown, it's speculated that she wanted to harm the family to help prevent Cable and possibly all mutants from being able to enter the Otherworld tournament, although her motives are still very foggy in my opinion. The Viscora seem obsessed with with cleansing, dissecting, and learning of any alien life forms. In other words, they pretty much want to kill everyone. Number 1. Donald Blake. Thor issue number 9 of the newest run from 2020 starts off a new story arc titled Prey. At the end of the issue, we see the return of Donald Blake, a former persona of Thor's who basically became his own person but then was trapped in a hell dimension. Driven mad, Dr. Donald Blake has returned, escaped his prison, and seems to be looking for revenge on all of the gods. This is a refreshing and interesting take on an old character, bringing him back as a villain now. It's what I really find intriguing about this new run on Thor, which I thought was maybe going to be trying to take us back to ones with, the title character himself and everything else, and yet we have amazing things like this happening. Donald Blake returning to us not as the same old ally, but as a villain. Shortly after escaping, Dr. Blake is confronted by Loki, so that's the god that he deals with first. Surprisingly, Blake makes quick work of Loki, vowing that he will no longer be a refuge for any god ever again, and they will no longer be able to hide from him. Thor, I think he's coming for you. I think so. Number 10. Super Skrull. Kl'rt might be recognizable when it comes to his character design, which admittedly has not changed that much over the years, but when it comes to his alignment, you might be somewhat surprised to learn where he is now, from where he started. Super Skrull Kl'rt made his first appearance in Fantastic Four issue 18. Once again, the Skrulls attempted to invade Earth and planned on defeating the FF, this time with their secret weapon, the Super Skrull, who seemed to possess all of the Fantastic Four's powers. Unfortunately, Mr. Fantastic and the team realized that these powers were likely not Super Skrull's own, and suspected in fact that they were delivered to him from the Skrull homeworld. They used a device to jam the signal that was giving Kl'rt his powers, defeating him. Currently in the comics, Kl'rt serves Emperor Hulkling, and was for a time one of his trusted advisors. Kl'rt, however, was also the one who killed Hulkling's foster mother. Recently in Empire Aftermath, Kl'rt felt so awful about his past that he actually offered his life to the Emperor. Hulkling refused to accept it though, instead preferring to make Kl'rt work in the area of diplomacy so that he might make amends for all the lives that he had taken in times of war. He was like, no. Instead, you gotta save lives, and hopefully that'll make up for it. You can't just die on me, Kl'rt. Number 9. Pets of Evil Masters. While the Pets of Evil Masters might not be the most impactful villains around, they are definitely some of the most adorable. These villains obviously seek to thwart the Pet Avengers, the pets of Earth's most mightiest heroes. Like their heroic opponents, the Pets of Evil Masters are exactly what they sound like, the pets of some of the most vile villains in the Marvel Universe. They are led by Doctor Doom's pet Vulture, Vulture Von Doom, and include Thori, Loki's Hellhound, and Bitey McSpidey who isn't stated to be owned by any specific villain, but is implied to be the spider that was responsible for creating Spider-Man. On Earth 616, that spider may have died, but on Earth 97161, where the Pets of Evil Masters are from, I guess that little spider lives on, seeking to wreak all kinds of havoc. And before we move on to this next part, just a quick thank you to you for sticking around watching this video, and if you haven't already, something that helps us out a ton here at the channel is clicking that like button, so do it. Click the like button, and if you did already, thank you so much for doing so, it really helps us out. Number 8. Null. While Null did first appear as a mysterious being in Thor God of Thunder issue number 6 in 2013, he wouldn't receive a full appearance with more exploration and embellishment in terms of his history until the summer of 2018. Now Null has become such a big figure that he is threatening not just Venom's existence, but the existence of all of Earth's heroes with the King in Black event that is slated to start in December. Null has come a long way since that first mysterious appearance, and it's likely he's going to aim to go even further to guarantee his place in the Marvel history books and lore for years to come.
Number 7. Poison Ivy. Taking place in Batman Joker War, we find a ravaged Gotham City. The Joker has sent out all his goons to run around and basically mess the place up. Most of Batman's villains are just laying low at this point, just kinda waiting to see what happens, just watching from afar. Now at this point, we haven't really seen much of Poison Ivy in the storyline. After a brawl with Punchline and Harley, most of Poison Ivy's hidden underground cave, called Eden, burned down. So Poison Ivy returns to look for Harley and she sees the damage. Oh There were a few of Joker's goons inside, but they obviously didn't last long, as you would have expected. She explains to the last guy before she kills him that she's done with distractions, and instead of rebuilding this cave, which she easily could have done, she summons up this new plant called Devil's Ivy. Cool name too. Speaking of cool names, she reveals her new persona, Queen Ivy. That's right, shortly after she builds a throne, a fancy new outfit, and to top it all off, a crown. I dig it.
Number 6. Ultimatum. Ultimatum is basically Dark Miles Morales from Earth 616. He grew up as part of the Rigoletto crime family and later in his life ended up serving time in prison in place of his cousin. Although Miles Morales, aka Spider-Man, has basically been moved to the Prime Universe of Earth 616 and made it his new home, following the destruction of his original universe, the Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610 and the Incursions, there was another Miles Morales who originally was from the main continuity, from Earth 616. We'll call him 616 Miles Morales. Try to make this less confusing for you. That Miles Morales of Earth 616 became a villain, working in league with Kingpin aka Wilson Fisk. 616 Miles has a scarred face and ends up becoming the villain known as Ultimatum. 616 Miles actually took that villain alias of Ultimatum and was planning on trying to send 1610 Miles, Spider-Man, back to his original universe and take over Brooklyn in the ongoing comic series Miles Morales Spider-Man. He was momentarily stopped, however, by Spider-Man himself and Prowler, who escaped his clutches. Miles versus Miles, who wins? Too many Miles! Just kidding, you can never have too many Miles Morales in my opinion. Number 5. Assessor. Assessor is an AI who is working in tandem with Ultimatum, or more specifically working for him. For those who don't know, Ultimatum is basically like evil Miles Morales, who was the Miles of the main continuity of Earth 616 originally. If you want to learn more about him, we actually talked about him in part 2 of this list series, so you can go back and check that out. Assessor as a villain is basically like a humanoid appearing Gladys from the Portal video game series. They had heroic Miles Morales brought to a testing center where they could run tests to gain in-depth information on his powers, threatening to harm his family members if he did not cooperate. Assessor does not appear to have any human emotions and only allowed Miles to escape after they were satisfied with the information they had already procured from the tests. It's unknown who created Assessor or where exactly they come from. It's all very mysterious.
In at 4, Midnight Man. Originally a collector of art, Anton Mogart would commit robberies at the stroke of midnight to build his collection. When Moon Knight stops him, he seemingly drowns in a river, but instead, he ends up becoming deformed by the waste found within the sewers. Then he goes insane and starts collecting trash, and teams with Bushman to defeat their sworn enemy. When Midnight Man finds out he's dying from cancer, he decides to find his son, hoping that he can share some of his final moments with him. Mogart does what he can to stop his son from turning to a life of crime like he once did, and in the wake of his death, he becomes the hero Midnight. It didn't last, and he ended up becoming a cyborg for the Secret Empire, which, while sounding bad, I think it would be kinda cool, like, to be a cyborg. Like, as long as I still have, like, my free will, and my programming isn't controlling me, because that just doesn't sound like fun. Like, I want to be able to turn my arm into a giant cannon. That'd be great. Someone tries to mug me, I'm just like, sorry.
Coming in at number 3, we have Duella Dent. Now, given her last name, you'd assume that Duella was Harvey Dent, aka Two-Face's daughter. And that was her original backstory, with her being given the name Duella because Two-Face was disappointed that he didn't have twins. However, Duella's origins are actually a lot more mysterious, as in subsequent appearances, she's claimed to be the daughter of the Joker, the Penguin, Catwoman, Scarecrow, Riddler, and even Doomsday. Given the extreme unlikelihood that Duella could somehow be all of these villains' daughters, this crazy killer's origins may still be a mystery, but definitely don't make her any less dangerous.
Penultimately, in at number 2, Overlord. A super-powered crime lord who operates out of Chicago, he is the archenemy of the Savage Dragon and the leader of Vicious Circle. There have been 3 people who had this mantle though: Antonio Seghetti, who I keep trying to call Antonio Spaghetti, Victor Nixon, and Flash Mercury. Antonio Seghetti grew up in Chicago around the time of Al Capone and became fascinated with the mafia way of life. When his sister was being in an alleyway, the 8-year-old Seghetti stabbed the man responsible and claimed his first victim. This act led to a life of crime, and he soon came under the wing of a man who would become Octopus, whilst also rising up through the ranks of the mafia. Once he had reached a position of authority in the mafia, Seghetti vowed that he would never lose his power, but his position came under threat when a superpowered freak became the dominant figures in Chicago's crime sector. Seeking resources and methods with which to cement his leadership position in Chicago, Seghetti forced alliances with the Nation of Lieberheim and cyber data organizations, and as well became Overlord, because that's what you do. And finally, in at number 1, Hunter's Moon. Dr. Batter was born in Luxor, Egypt to 2 doctors and was an excellent student throughout his life, eventually becoming a doctor as well. He grew to become a very rational and serious person who didn't believe in any higher entities, despite still attending prayer and studying the Quran and the Hadith. This all changed when he was attacked by vampires and left to die on the streets, at which point he met the Egyptian moon god Khonshu. Dr. Batter survived and became a worshipper of Khonshu, who fancied himself the god's second highest priest, and opposite of Mark Spector. After learning that Moon Knight had taken in vampires under his protection, Dr. Batter terrorized the Nightwalkers to get his attention. Hunter's Moon eventually confronted Moon Knight, chastised him for taking in enemies of Khonshu, and expressed his intentions to correct him. Dr. Batter beat Moon Knight and invaded the Midnight Mission to kill the vampires, but Spectre recovered and knocked him unconscious after attacking him from behind. Which, you know what, after beating him, I'm not even gonna call it, that's kinda shady. I respect it.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Harley Sin. Constance Brand, aka Harley Sin, is the daughter of a billionaire, so you already know she's going to be trouble. Harley Sin first came around in 2016, making her first appearance back in Gang of Harleys issue 1. First of all, the look of Harley Sin, I'm here for it. She's got that Rocky Horror Picture Show vibe, she's a badass. The second issue, titled Hit 'Em Where It Hurts, we see the tattooed badass punk put in some work. She meets Harley Quinn, and during a fun little introduction panel, we see Sin say the words, "I'm the person that's going to be killing each and every one of your useless gang." So right off the hop, she's kind of a big deal. I don't know, she's in a bad mood. So this rich billionaire father I mentioned earlier, yeah, Harley Sin's father in fact is believed to be Donald Trump, or at least he was drawn and characterized to resemble him. That plus the tattoos, drug addictions, and lust for violence, you got yourselves quite the villain. And before we move on to number 9, make sure if you guys haven't done so already to go ahead and click that like button. It helps us out a bunch here at the studio, and it's this one, not this one. Unless you're a Spider-Man, then maybe it's that one. Go ahead and click that one.
Coming in at number 9, we have Starro the Conqueror, specifically the version seen in James Gunn's 2021 film, The Suicide Squad. Found by American astronauts during the early days of the Cold War, merely drifting through space, Starro was imprisoned and tortured for 30 years by the American government on the island Corto Maltese when it was discovered that Starro possessed incredible telepathic mind control powers that the government seek to learn how to weaponize. Although he eventually had to be taken down by the Suicide Squad when his anger at being imprisoned caused him to go on a rampage, Starro's story wound up being a tragic one, as his sad last words were, "I was happy, floating, staring at the stars." Rest in peace, Starro. Hopefully there's lots of stars to look at in big, mysterious kaiju heaven.
And it ain't Dave. Dave's origin is unknown as of yet, but it is heavily inferred that he was like the other thousands of robots in this series, created by humans to serve a certain task. However, the robots became advanced enough to form their own conscious thoughts, so of course they revolted and killed off the entire human race. It was shown that Dave was one of the robots that served in combat and also helped fight off numerous alien races, and after the wars, robots seemed to act entirely like humans, adopting their culture and their way of life. Dave had a wife named Sally, who he actually later divorced because apparently even robot girlfriends are unbearable, and a son called Scotty. However, he is now a nobody working as an office drone, which only makes him more of a villain, despite being the protagonist of the story, because like, given that he wiped out the entire human race, I think it's safe to say that he's a villain. And it's 7, Dead Zone. There are a few characters more 90s than Dead Zone, but he has his appeal. Dead Zone sort of emulates the classic Iron Man villain Whiplash with his electrical whips, but he's less a mercenary than just an ideological warrior. He seeks to punish sinners by lashing them to death, that it has him run afoul with Moon Knight. Dead Zone first appeared in Moon Knight's solo title and is pretty evenly matched for the character. When Moon Knight tried to take him down with his adamantium, Dead Zone catches it and then turns it around on him. There's very little on the wiki about him, and honestly I don't know what else I could say about him, but he's trying to do what Moon Knight does, but going about it in an absolutely abysmal way. Like, come on bro, really? Whips? Like, I get that they're OP in like the Spider-Man PS4 game, but seem seriously underpowered in real life or in comic books, unless they need them for plot or you're into that kind of thing.
Coming in at number 6, we have the Court of Owls. Introduced in one of my personal favorite Batman arcs, the Court of Owls is an ancient conspiracy that has controlled Gotham City from the shadows for hundreds of years. Originally believed to just be a myth by Batman, given that he had investigated their existence as a kid after the murder of his parents, the court eventually revealed themselves when Bruce Wayne committed to super modernizing Gotham City. With multiple assassins that are seemingly immortal in their employ, and even some members of the court itself appearing to be human-owl hybrids, there's still a lot we don't know about the Court of Owls, and I for one can't wait to find out what we'll learn next.
Number 5, Violator. Violator was always an indie villain that haunted my nightmares as a kid. Violator is the clown character with blue face paint from the Spawn film, who was played by John Leguizamo. I love John Leguizamo, but this role, wow. Also, John Leguizamo and everything is kind of wow, it's great. Not only did he crush it, but it also felt like he kind of crushed me and my soul under the terror of the Violator. The Violator in the comics is a Spawn villain who is one of the most powerful demons of hell. He often focuses on getting Spawn to use his necro powers, trying to get him sent back to hell to become Malabolgia's servant faster, but also serves to prepare Hellspawn for joining the army of Satan. Of course, that doesn't mean that he enjoys his job, and he often seeks to try and undermine his master. Violator is basically immortal as well. Despite dying many times, he is often reanimated shortly after in hell, only to return to torment Spawn some more. Yay. Number 4, Xeno. Xeno is a mutant terrorist group who is composed of others from previous mutant hate groups. The idea is all those mutant hate groups have now unified like the mutants themselves, becoming this new group known as Xeno, which was written to be a play on the word xenophobia. Xeno managed to capture mutant Domino and use her skin to mask their own soldiers as mutants so that they could infiltrate Krakoa and massacre as many mutants as possible before the alarm sounded in the mutant nation. During their first appearance, they managed to assassinate mutant leader Charles Xavier. Though fortunately, Charles was able to be resurrected following this instance, and Krakoa covered up the successful assassination to make it seem as though he was never killed in the first place. Because, you know, you can't let other world leaders know that your world leader was assassinated. That's it's not so good.
Number 3, Harley Quinn. Making her first debut back in Batman Harley Quinn in 1999 and portrayed by the insanely talented Margot Robbie, literally one of the best actors on the face of the earth, Harley Quinn has always been known for flipping back and forth, changing sides. She's kinda weaving in and out a little bit, you know? Even her character evolution in the new DC movies alone, like looking at Harley in Birds of Prey compared to how we met her in Suicide Squad. In the comics, her relationship with the Joker is abusive and it's controlling, and Harley has histrionic personality disorder, so she has a lot of things in common with the Joker. So when it comes to seeking attention with all these crime lords, she's super entertaining when she tries to get Mr. J's attention. She uses her psychiatrist skills to get in close, you know, get in your head a little bit. She's super lovable as well. I mean, obviously, look who's playing her. I'm glad DC is moving Harley to be her own character in this new live action franchise. It's a nice message too. It's like, you know what, no matter how deep in love you are with a psycho, you can always break out of it, start a gang, and kick some bad guys' ass. There's always time, guys.
Number 2, Annihilation. Annihilation is a dark god who possesses those who wear their golden mask. Whoever so possesses their mask is overtaken by the dark entity within it, and depending on their own strength, is often destroyed by the sheer power of the god and mask itself. It is believed to be the spirit of Amenth that manifested, and is also linked to the control and rule over the Amenthi demons. Without anyone wearing the mask to rule them, the Amenthi demons are revealed to be destructive and reckless, destroying anything and everything they can get their hands on without any need for a reason. The shocking revelation of Annihilation's current true identity was recently revealed in the current X-Men run in issue 14. No spoilers for anyone who isn't caught up. Number 1, Kang. Kang the Conqueror is believed to be coming to the MCU in this next cinematic phase. So while he might not be a new villain in terms of the comics, in terms of the MCU, he's going to be one of the freshest we've seen. Once he shows up, that is, in Ant-Man 3, which is expected to release in 2022. Woo! 2022, that's a long way away. It is believed that the brilliant Jonathan Majors will be playing Kang, or at least one form of him, and that he'll be showing up in Ant-Man 3. And that's according to the Ant-Man 3 IMDb page. It's right on there if you look at it. The cool thing with Kang, however, is that he's a time-traveling villain who, as a result, has been known by many different identities and aliases throughout his history. So while Jonathan Majors may be playing one version of him, there might be other actors also playing Kang. The weird thing though with Kang is that he's a time-traveling villain who as a result has been known by many different identities and aliases. So yeah, it could be great or it could be really confusing. We've known him as a Mortis, Rama Tut, and even at one point as Iron Lad. It'll be interesting to see how Marvel and Disney aim to integrate Kang and what this means for not just the main continuity but the potential multiverse within the MCU. So many great and bizarre new villains and reinvented villains coming your way. I don't even know what to think of Kang coming to the MCU. That just seems so strange, but I also feel like sometimes the strangest choices are the best. Also, we're getting Jonathan Majors, so I feel really good about that. I guess only time will tell how that will go.
And at 10, Werewolf by Night. The first time we've seen Moon Knight in the comics actually wasn't in his own series, but rather Werewolf by Night number 32. He faced off against Jack Russoff, aka Werewolf by Night, making Russoff his enemy. However, technically, Moon Knight was the villain in this scenario, hence its placement at number 10. Jacob Russoff is a werewolf, but unlike his dad, also a werewolf, Jack could control when and where he would transform, not just under a full moon. He had much more control over his abilities in werewolf form as well, except for when there was a full moon, because that's when Jack would be at his strongest but also completely out of control, which is a concept that sounds a lot like a D&D character. His superpowers include werewolf physiology along with superhuman strength, speed, durability, agility, stamina, a healing factor, and of course a hairy body packed with a nasty set of teeth and killer claws, something the ladies love.
Number 9. Grail. Grail is the villainous daughter of Darkseid and basically acts as an opposing force to Wonder Woman. The two women were born at exactly the same time, and it was prophesied that Grail, the daughter of Darkseid, and Myrna would bring about much destruction. As such, she was almost killed as soon as she was born, but her mother protected her. She proved almost right away in the comics that she was a new villain worthy of our time when she made easy work of the Justice League. She and Diana ended up facing off shortly thereafter, but their fight was interrupted. However, they would continue to clash during the Darkseid War and likely will keep doing so, as Grail was basically designed to be the perfect foil for Wonder Woman. Grail was first introduced in Justice League Volume 2, Issue 40.
And number 8, Godspeed. August Hart, aka Godspeed, made his first debut not too long ago in the Flash Rebirth Volume 2, Issue 1. With a name like Godspeed, one can only assume the powers in which they'll contain. Super speed, which is also my favorite superpower on the low. Created by Joshua Williamson and Carmine Di Giandomenico, sorry if I butchered that name, I tried 7 times. Godspeed stands out from the rest of the speedsters because of one badass reason. He can separate speedsters from the Speed Force. Now if you watch the CW's Arrowverse, you know what I'm talking about already. August Hart was also a detective, a former partner of Barry Allen, to be frank. And then along comes a force storm in Central City, and all of a sudden you have these godlike powers. Pretty ideal powers for a hero and also a villain. That's right, as you would have guessed by clicking this video, he doubles as a villain on the low. So he became the Flash's partner while secretly becoming Godspeed the villain. Not cool, dude. Why'd the villain move though? Well, when August's brother was murdered by a criminal, he was released due to insubstantial evidence. So August decides to confront the Black Hole organization after they had stolen property from Star Labs. He sees their symbol that resembles one at his brother's crime scene. Interesting. So while confronting him, that's when the Speed Force lightning strikes. I feel like if I was a speedster, I would just be like Quicksilver. I'd hang out in the basement, play some stolen video games. Is it really that hard to just chill out? I know you're angry, but like, it's all good. Speed walk it off.
Number 7. Apocalypse's children / first horsemen, I suppose. These kids are the ones who obviously inspired Apocalypse in the future when it came to naming and creating his horsemen thereafter. Their names are the same as those Apocalypse would normally take for his horsemen: war, death, famine, and pestilence. These children made their first appearance recently and then resurfaced once more extremely recently in the newest X-Men series. They hold a grudge against Apocalypse, who they believe abandoned his family. They blame him for such, and while you might think that Apocalypse is a villain, so who cares, right now he is aligned with the other mutants of Krakoa, and as such is actually considered mostly a good guy, for now anyways. He did do some shady stuff, so not so nice, Apocalypse. Or however we're saying your name now, Krakoan symbols with an A in the middle, however I say that in Krakoan.
Number 6, The Kindred. Making its first appearance in the Multiversity Guidebook number 1, the Kindred is this cosmic force that appeared after the Rebirth event. Created by Grant Morrison, the Kindred is a 4-part entity, and they each represent DC lore, so those 4 being the Speed Force, magic, cosmic power, and emotional light spectrum. so they have a handle on pretty much any angle out there. Now, this is a villain list, so this is bad news for us, or rather bad news for pretty much any world. For starters, they take all of the energy from living creatures. That's how they come together. Nice, teamwork. Teamwork makes the dream work. Also tears. So off the bat, these guys are just OP. I love the look of these celestial gods though. They each have like their own color. Even if Brian Hitch wrote them into his run with the Justice League, with destruction being the driving force, this is still kind of a villain that even I'll root for. I said it, sue me, what's up? Number 5, William Cobb, the Talon. He made his comic book debut in 2011 back in Batman Volume 2, Issue 2, and the Talon is an assassin for the Court of Owls, who claims to have killed several Wayne family members, including Bruce Wayne's great-great-grandfather, Alan Wayne. Not a bad resume. He began his early days juggling baseballs on the street just to get by, and after his father had passed away tragically while building a bridge for Cameron Kane, he began his early days juggling baseballs on the street just to get by, after his father had passed away tragically while building a bridge for Cameron Kane. So he would earn some money and then sneak it into his mother's purse. What a gem. And then one day somebody was watching his act and then got pickpocketed. So William Cobb noticed and hucked one of these baseballs at him, saving the day. The man offered him a job at a circus as a thank you. So he started using knives instead of baseballs to amp up the act, keep it fresh, and eventually met his love Amelia back when he returned to Gotham. Now he was a celebrity though. Amelia's father didn't like the two in love, so he told William to beat it. Amelia at this time was actually pregnant. Ruh-roh. So Cobb joined the Court of Owls and became one of the Talons, and went back to Amelia's house to kidnap his own son. His son ends up becoming the Gray Son of Gotham, John Grayson's father.
Number 4, Legion. Legion has a new look in X-Men Onslaught Revelation. This one-shot is kind of like the bookend for the Way of X limited series if you were checking that out, which I personally haven't read all of, but I will say the parts of it that I have read have been strictly excellent, so I would recommend Way of X to anyone that's interested. If you like the idea of pondering the why in life and beliefs, and you enjoy philosophical prose, this is really a great series for you. In Onslaught Revelation, Nightcrawler, Legion, Pixie, and Dust come together to try and defeat the resurrected Onslaught, who has been slowly returning with each resurrection, residing as pieces in the minds of all mutants. In order to help in the fight against Onslaught, Legion makes his mind a safe space for all mutants to come through, in essence also fully connecting with Krakoa and kind of becoming a sort of hive mind if necessary. As such, he gets a redesign, though he still gets to keep the wild shape of his hair that we've all come to recognize so well, and that I've really come to love. Legion, moving forward after the defeat of Onslaught, will also keep this look as he becomes the newly created religion's church. That's right, Legion is the church. He's the building. In essence, people can come into his mind to worship, find community, and seek sanctuary. It's like a nice safe space for people to come and just be and feel good. It's awesome. I love that Legion is the church. I just think that's great. Number 3, Donald Blake. Donald Blake ended up becoming a villain recently in the comics, which is a pretty big change for a guy who was once also the mighty hero Thor. Donald Blake used to be Thor's human form, but in reality was kind of his own person, or he kind of ended up becoming his own person. He was created by Odin to be a human host for Thor, but after Thor died at the hands of the serpent, Blake became separated from Thor and became his own separate entity. Eventually, he would end up going to the Enchantress for help, only for her to use him to make her own villainous creature referred to as the Keep. Basically, she killed Donald Blake and then used his blood to make the Keep, and we haven't seen the Keep in a while, but I'm sure he's out there somewhere. After Amora and the Keep were defeated by Thor, Blake was laid to rest, living on as a disembodied head in a dream world that was crafted for him. Well, living on as a person in the dream world, but he was just a disembodied head. But he was asleep, so he was dreaming. Eventually, though, Blake came to realize that this world wasn't real, and awoke from his dream, seeking revenge on all Thors across the multiverse for what had happened to him. And don't worry, he wasn't just a head then, he had a body then. He would end up being defeated by 616 Thor in the end, and then made into the God of Lies, as per Thor's brother Loki's suggestion. Thor was like, what do we do with this guy? We shouldn't kill this guy. He's Donald Blake. Loki's like, nah, let's make him the God of Lies. Seems to fit considering everything Donald Blake has been through. Number 2, Taskmaster. Taskmaster is Anthony Masters and is known for being an unstoppable foe. He can master pretty much any skill he can observe. Some would say he's a taskmaster, which makes him a deadly opponent. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we were also introduced to Taskmaster, but the character was changed somewhat for the film in which they were introduced, Black Widow. Instead, Antonia Dreykov, the daughter of General Dreykov, the man behind the Red Room, was Taskmaster. When Black Widow left the Red Room and became an Avenger, she believed she had killed Dreykov, sadly also having to kill his daughter, who basically led them to their target. She was a casualty of the explosion, intended to kill Dreykov himself. Instead, Antonia was actually badly injured and ended up surviving, but her face was permanently scarred. She then became Dreykov's weapon, having studied the moves of the Avengers and having their fighting styles basically uploaded into her brain, allowing her to mimic all their various moves and making her a hard opponent for Black Widow to defeat. Quite different from the comic book version, but still really cool and badass as an alternate version of the character, I think. Number 1. Cyber. Cyber has come a long way when it comes to his look in the comics. Granted, Cyber has also come back a lot of times, so I guess it kinda makes sense that he would look different. He made his first appearance in Marvel Comics Presents in issue 85 in the 90s, where he was introduced to us as a cyborg-appearing Wolverine villain who was hired by General Koi, another enemy of Logan's. Back then, he was just a smile and a coat with a hat on. Currently, however, his design is much different, and he doesn't even go by the name Cyber anymore, instead being known as Hornet in the comics in his newest body. Number 10. Luminous. Luminous was actually a pretty cool new villain who seemed to really only be used for one story arc. She was one of the only cool things really to come out of the realization that Wanda and Pietro Maximoff were not actually Magneto's children, as we'd been led to believe for years. In fact, they weren't even mutants, they were the product of the High Evolutionaries' experimentation, which fit more in line with their origins in the MCU, which I guess is why we changed that. No, I'm not mad about it. Not at all. It turns out the High Evolutionary had also used their genetic material to create a sister for them both, known as Luminous. She possessed both the chaos magic, reality warping powers of Scarlet Witch, as well as the super speed of Quicksilver, and was originally ordered by her father, the High Evolutionary, to kill her genetic siblings. She tried real hard. Number 9. Hell's Bells. Hell's Bells was a group of villains who were all female mutants. The team was originally assembled by Cyber, who trained all of its members and consisted of Shrew, Briquette, Flame, Tremolo, and Vague. When Shrew betrayed them by testifying against them in order to get immunity for herself, the Hell's Bells banded together in an attempt to get revenge on her for betraying them. Eventually, they would be successfully taken into custody by X-Factor. Following the events of M-Day and Decimation, all team members save Briquette found themselves completely depowered. They still have operated as criminals in the comics, appearing in the Children of Atom series most recently, but they were a lot less scary because they had to rely on equipment and gadgets in place of, their own powers. Even without their powers, the team mainly stuck together though, minus Briquette and obviously Shrew. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want even more lists about Marvel villains you might not recognize or something in that realm, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Silver Samurai. While Silver Samurai looks much the same in the comics as he always has, not every iteration of him has been so recognizable. We've seen him turn up here and there on Krakoa recently. He seems to enjoy watching and participating in the friendly single combat matches in the Quarry, and in modern comics, he's recognizable. But how about in modern film? Well, Silver Samurai might not be a main character in Fox's mutant universe, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't exist. He actually made an appearance in the 2013 film The Wolverine. But although here he also seemingly looked the same, when it came to his armor at least, he couldn't be further from his comic book counterpart in actuality. That's because Silver Samurai here was an adamantium robot whom Wolverine had to battle against. Yeah, they made Keniyukio Harada robot armor. He was at least piloted by Ikiro Yoshida, who was obviously that film's version of Ken's own father in the comics. So, at least there was a little bit of a thing, but still, he wasn't even a person. He was just robot armor. Like, rude. Ken is a whole person, okay? It's not just armor. Number 7, Forearm. Forearm is Michael McCain. Originally, Michael was part of Strife's Mutant Liberation Front. He was one of the founding members, but would end up defeated by those that fought against him. Despite generally being on the side of the villains, Forearm was also welcomed onto the mutant island nation of Krakoa, where he could have a fresh start for himself. He accepted the offer and would end up joining Sword and being seen as a member of Magic's Dark Riders, who I think should get their own book. However, on Krakoa, he looks a bit different from his initial appearance, where he decidedly was showing a lot more forearm and had much less shirt. Forearm's mutant power is that he has 4 arms. Get it? Get it? He has 4 arms. And now he wears shirts. Good for you, Forearm. Good for you. Although you can also not wear a shirt. You can not wear a shirt if you don't want to wear a shirt. Like, I'm not going to pressure anyone to wear shirts if they don't want to, or vice versa. I'm not going to pressure anyone to like not wear a shirt if they're like, I like my shirt, let me keep my shirt. But I do like his new design as well. His new outfit is pretty cool. Number 6, Thanos. Thanos might look very similar to his initial appearance in the comics, and also looks quite similar on the big screen, but he's seen a pretty big change when it comes to what he's up to recently. In the comics, that is. In the MCU, he's mainly dead and gone, but there is a chance perhaps that he could return. Who knows? Not only have we now met Star Fox or Eros in the MCU, but in the comics, Thanos has become the new Prime Eternal, and as such, their new leader. That's right, this guy just went from being the baddest supervillain around to leader of a superhero team. Although we'll have to see where the Eternals' alignment is in the comics following the events of Avengers vs. X-Men vs. Eternals War, because that's probably going to be crazy. Also, I don't even know what the Eternals is really doing in that mix, but I'm here for it. I'm here to check that out. Number 5, Rhino. Rhino was given a completely new look for his appearance in the second Amazing Spider-Man film. Honestly, Rhino is a hard villain to do in live action, I feel like, so I'm not surprised with the direction that they went with, but also, what a weird direction to go in for that character, considering what they're actually supposed to be like in the comics. In the comics, Rhino is Alexei Sistovich, who is genetically altered and then bonded to a suit of armor that increases his strength and durability. Basically, he's given like a mechanical rhino skin, but like the skin. The armor was modeled after a rhinoceros, as they are known in nature for being relentless when it comes to their assault and extremely hard to defeat due to their tough hide. Rhino, however, has never been known for being very smart, which makes him fairly easy to defeat usually, which seems to be the same idea when it came to his cinematic counterpart. However, the whole design for this character was definitely different than the comic book counterpart, whose armor was much less mech-like or robotic and is more like just the tough hide of a rhino. Really, he kind of just looks like a guy in a rhino suit in the comics. Also, Alexei is just super jacked in the comics, and his cinematic counterpart didn't seem so jacked. He was just like a guy in a suit. Of course, Alexei does get a lot of his jackedness as well from his whole rhino thing, but he also, I think, was jacked still to begin with. I'm pretty sure. He's just more jacked.
Number 4, Eradicator 2. With that name alone, oh boy, you already know what's coming. The Eradicator 2 was created, of course, after DC's rebirth with the absence of the original Eradicator. Another big bad version was bound to show up. I mean, we expected it. So of course, this is the newer version of Eradicator from the 80s comics, but the best part is that he still has the 80s look. He's got the retro, badass glasses, which are such a nice touch, by the way. Just by looking at this guy, you can tell he's the coolest. Created by General Zod, this AI ended up taking on the physicalities of Superman, hence the everything about him. So when this badass AI is close to a yellow sun, he gets powered up real good. I'm talking the usual super strength, stamina, flight, speed, and he's basically invincible. A cool but scary power that he also obtains is that of energy manipulation, because he's made of course, pure energy. Eradicator wasn't used too much, but I feel like Eradicator 2, since his first new appearance in Superman Volume 4 Issue 2, at the very end we see his rebirth, and it's beautiful. Once the Kryptonian gene is detected back on the Fortress of Solitude, energy forms all around the room. There's an ID badge, some glasses, and then bam, all this mixed into one. You get this bright pop, and his opening line being, "We are here, we will save you too, Kal-El." And it's sick. He's like basically Terminator with a cape. He's got the look, there's this energy coming from him. I would love to see this guy go head to head with Henry Cavill. I mean, maybe we'll get more of a dark alternate version with the Snyder cut of the Justice League, but Fine, that'll have to do in the meantime. For now.
Number 3, White Sword. White Sword was one of the mutants who was part of the original mutant nation of Okara, which Apocalypse and his wife Genesis ruled. He was one of the leaders who was sent along with his army of 100 champions to defeat the Amenthi who attacked. He was believed to have been victorious, but was also lost to his people as a result. A healer capable of resurrection, he would revive his army daily to fight the Amenthi horde the following day. It's said that this drove the White Sword somewhat insane, and when he later ran into his own people such as Genesis, who herself had been sent out with a mutant army under her command, he saw even them as his enemy and he attacked, defeating Genesis. He will be one of the champions to fight on the side of Arako opposing Krakoa in the Ten of Swords tournament. He also happens to look similar to Apocalypse but with different armor. Maybe you don't see that, but I definitely see that.
Number 2, the Batman who laughs. Bruce Wayne, but from Earth 22, is a touch different than the one that we know best. The Dark Universe is a very special and very vast place filled with alternate versions of characters, but one of the most notable has to be the Batman who laughs. Making his first appearance in Dark Days, the casting, this Bruce Wayne has, well, of course, similar origins that we're familiar with. Parents were murdered, became a crime-fighting bat, protects Gotham, all the good stuff. But this Joker changed his path up. Joker began murdering everybody in Gotham. He bombed a hospital and then shot the parents of the kids. Like, he's twisted, and he's also dying at the same time. He's dying from the chemicals that made him become the Joker in the first place. So of course he wanted to take everybody out with him. So when Batman stepped in and killed him by breaking his neck, the toxins from the Joker were inhaled by poor Batsy, causing this to happen. So a day later, he's joined by Batgirl, Nightwing, Red Hood, Red Robin, who were training in the Batcave, and then Batman then shot all of them. And then this is just the beginning. This insane clown Batsy is terrifying and entertaining in all of the right ways.
Number 1, Ghostmaker. We don't know a lot about Ghostmaker yet. He first appeared in Volume 3 of Batman, the current run, in issue 100 as a mysterious figure. And so far, he stayed that way. We'll likely see more of him in issue 103, but so far we know he's not as new as he might appear. In fact, in Batman issue 102, Batman seems to recognize him, leading many to speculate as to which old rival Ghostmaker's true identity could actually be. We do know that he's here to challenge Batman for Gotham and to provide the people with an alternate option when it comes to choosing their hero for their city. He also comes with a ton of tech, and at this point is probably going to quickly end up being better equipped than Batman himself when it comes to gadgets, as Bruce just lost all of his fortune to Lucius Fox. Well, he gave it away, that is. And Lucius is out of the Batman game. Bruce is on his own this time around when it comes to equipping himself, and he only has his own ingenuity and the help of the Bat fam to back him up.
Starting us off in at number 10, Vlad Plasmius. In the world of Danny Phantom, there exists a select few individuals with the ability to transition between a human form and a ghost form. One of these is Danny Fenton, the other is a female clone of him named Danny Fenton, but the third is probably the most important one, Vlad Plasmius, also known as Vlad Masters, Amity Park's mayor and Danny's dad's old college friend who's in love with his wife. Yeah. Vlad is secretly a human-ghost hybrid, actually the first to come into existence, following an accident that was caused by a college experiment that he was working on with Jack and Maddie, which are Danny's parents, in which Vlad gained his powers. Having been a half-ghost for the last 20 years, he serves as the main antagonist of the series, acting as just Danny's ultimate villain. But I mean, being a human-ghost hybrid and being the reason Danny Phantom goes dark in another timeline where his family's blown up is certainly worthy of getting him on this list. Plus, I love Danny Phantom. Butch, send me a pop figure, please. I couldn't find one. In at 9, Morpheus. Morpheus first appeared in Moon Knight number 12 back in the early 80s, and he's one of the rare horrifying characters that people actually feel sympathy for. Despite his vampiric appearance, he should not be mistaken for Morbius. This is a different person. The character who's getting the standalone movie, no one knows what universe it's in. Yeah, Morbius is indeed a pseudo-vampire, while Morpheus is something else entirely. His real name is Robert Markham, and he got sick from an old virus that caused segments of his DNA to be inhibited by the virus. He sought medical attention, and Dr. Peter Alron gave him an untested to help him, but it all backfired, causing Markham to change dramatically appearance-wise while also taking away Markham's need for sleep and giving him unfathomable psionic powers. However, the lack of sleep rendered him crazy, after which he had taken the alias Morpheus after the Olympian god of dreams. With his newfound powers, Morpheus sought revenge upon Elrond, only to encounter Moon Knight in the process.
Coming in at number 8, we have the Lord of Chaos, Dominus. An enemy of Superman's, Dominus was originally a peaceful magic user on his alien homeworld, who soon became jealous when the woman he loved ascended past him and became the magical leader of their planet. Filled with envy and rage, Dominus was imprisoned in the Phantom Zone as punishment for attempting to betray his love, and over the course of his long imprisonment, Dominus soon learned to embrace the chaos of magic and managed to free himself through a gateway in Superman's Fortress of Solitude. With strength to rival the Man of Steel himself and magical abilities that can completely distort reality, Dominus is one of the most unpredictable and dangerous magic wielders in the entire DC universe.
Number 7, Scorpina. Scorpina was known for being one of Rita Repulsa's most capable enforcers in the television show Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and the same can be said for her comic book counterpart. In fact, I'd even say that Scorpina is a bit more ruthless in the comics, in my opinion. She ends up becoming a somewhat reluctant and sassy ally later on, but starts out as a strong and menacing villain to the Power Rangers. Scorpina is known for her determination, expert fighting skills, and her intelligence. She initially is presented as a major enemy for Tommy Oliver, the Green Ranger, as he struggles to fight against Rita Repulsa's influence and hold over him. Scorpina would also go on to work alongside Lord Draken, the evil alternate future version of Tommy, and would later succeed him as the leader of his army.
And at 6, Black Spectre. Carson Knowles was a veteran who returned home without applause. His job had been passed on and his wife left him with their son. He barely got by as a delivery man and found out his son was killed by foam. After his car was stripped for parts and a mugger accosted him, Knowles snapped and beat the man nearly to death. Seeking to destroy the city that treated him so badly, Carson Knowles ran as a dark horse candidate for mayor on his father's name and political connections. He also created a second identity as Black Spectre, beating and blackmailing the local precinct boss to support Knowles, and then in a fight with Moon Knight his mask slipped, but Moon Knight was unable to convince anyone that the mayoral candidate Knowles and Black Spectre were the same person. Eventually though, Moon Knight defeated Black Spectre in public and his assistant Marlene Arlone uncovered Knowles' corrupt plans for the city and his political office, so at least he lost.
Coming in at number 5, we have Vandal Savage. Remember how I mentioned Eclipso is one of the oldest beings on Earth in the DC universe? Well, Vandal Savage is also in the running, having lived through much of human history as an immortal warrior and conqueror. Seemingly unable to age and with incredible healing abilities in most depictions of the character, Vandal supposedly gained his incredible powers from the radiation of a comet that may have originally been connected to Superman's homeworld of Krypton. Regardless of how he gained his abilities, however, Savage has been a persistent enemy to the Justice League for literally thousands of years, always scheming for a new way to gain more power.
And at 4, Nemesis. At the start of this series, the supervillain Nemesis destroys a building in Tokyo, killing a SWAT team and a police inspector. In Washington, D.C., the FBI informs Metro Police Chief Inspector Blake Morrow that Nemesis is targeting him next. Haha. Wonderful. He is given a card reading Black Morrow, March 12th at midnight, flatline still counts. Morrow has his family put in protective custody, and then Nemesis hijacks Air Force One over the District of Columbia, taking the United States president hostage and crashing the plane. Nemesis makes an international broadcast, revealing the president as a hostage in front of him, and then finishing it off by saying, "It's time you hail your new chief." Nemesis reveals to his henchman that his real name is Matt Anderson, and his father had committed suicide after Morrow tried to imprison him for hunting runaway teenagers with his rich friends. Bored of well behavior and less excitement, Anderson traveled around the world to learn the ways of crime, hoping to fulfill his mother's dying wish to have Morrow killed. So I think you can understand that this guy is pretty messed up and a powerful villain. Getting close to the end, and at number 3, Seth Falcon. He belongs to a Scottish sect of Knights Templar and has several amazing powers. I'll never do that accent again. Falcon first appeared in Mark Spector Moon Knight number 43. Seth Falcon is immortal, has superhuman strength and stamina, but his strongest power is his touch. Using his clawed fingers, Falcon can drain the life force out of any living being, aging them in the process. If he holds his grip for long enough, Seth can drain the entire life out of somebody, all of it, turning them into a rotted skeleton. However, there's a catch. Due to biofeedback, the draining process backfires if Seth uses it on anybody who shares his DNA code, even partially. Simply put, he can't drain his relatives because it causes a series of issues that then hurts and weakens his powers. And yep, that's right. You guessed it, of course, Moon Knight turns out to be one of his long-lost relatives, so Falcon has to rely on his superhuman strength and stamina to outlast Mark Spector in any mutual fight. Which is good, because that kind of like levels the playing field.
Coming in at number 2, we have to go with Batman's iconic nemesis, the Joker. When you're making a list about mysterious villains, the Clown Prince of Crime just has to be on there. Because in a way, even more extreme than Duella, we still don't know what this guy's really all about. There have been attempts over the years to give the Joker some sort of backstory, like the Red Hood incident, or when the DC universe briefly had 3 entirely separate Jokers, but these stories always seem to land on deciding that the Joker's true origin is ambiguous at best. But in all honesty, giving 100% certain backstory to the Joker would be betraying much of his character, and leaving a bit of ambiguity, well, that's probably for the best.
Number 1, Lady Death. Because, you know, one comic book version of Death wasn't enough, so we had to do another one. Lady Death is one of the most powerful female supervillains out there, as she is literally the embodiment of death. And if you think you know about this Lady Death, you might not, because we're not talking about the one from Marvel. She hails from the bad girl comic days, where it was trendy for female characters to be bad, whether that be bad as anti-heroes, full-on heroes, or villains. In Lady Death's case, she was mainly known as a villain. She first debuted with Chaos Comics, but has changed publishers since her initial appearance with them. Lady Death originally was the beautiful and sexy woman who seduced Ernest Fairchild into becoming a full-on psychotic killer, who would later become known as Evil Ernie. As such, her first appearance was in Evil Ernie issue number 1 in the original black and white 1991 series. The Evil Ernie War of the Dead series finishes with Ernie managing to kill everyone on Earth in order to win Lady Death's favor. He does so by instigating an all-out nuclear war, ending the story with a mushroom cloud. And then ending the story again with the mushroom cloud of his face. This Evil Ernie never dies.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Dawn of the Dead. Making his first appearance in Taskmaster Volume 2, Issue 2. Okay, right off the bat, this guy rocks. I mean, look at this dude's style. Come on, he knows he's poppin'. He's a former SHIELD operative, and while he was a military advisor to the Mexican Armed Forces, he had met Taskmaster. Now, after he had left SHIELD, he got this amazing new persona, Dawn, D-O-N, of the Dead, which is my new favorite name for any villain ever. That's it. He pretends to be Mexican and was elected a governor in western Mexico. It was there that he was trained by Taskmaster, and now he's the leader of his very own cartel that focuses on methamphetamine. Nice. So this is a wild villain. Every panel of this guy is super flashy and very dramatic. Of course. He's also quite the performer. In his first issue, you see him addressing a crowd of Hannah Montana wannabes, saying that this is what real narcos sounds like. Again, the guy from SHIELD pretending to be Mexican. Awesome. Duly noted.
And before we move on with our list, guys, if you could just go ahead and toss us a thumbs up, because, you know, it helps us a lot here at the studio. And thank you very much to everyone that has already done that. Thank you. Number 9, Macho Gomez. Macho shows up as a random villain to Deadpool in issue 32 of his 2008 series. He is basically an alien hitman who thinks he's the best. Definitely better than the earthbound merc with a mouth, Deadpool. In reality, he proves to not be as great as he thought he was. Deadpool makes quick work of him and then ends up going on a space adventure to get paid and to prove his mettle to the galaxy and the universe. This prompts an epic space opera arc where Deadpool takes over Macho's life, taking his former job and even marrying his widow.
Number 8, the Builders. The oldest race in the universe, and they actually consider themselves perfect beings. Okay, wow, we're gonna go there. I see you. Yeah, okay, you're perfect. Sweet. Beyonce and the Builders. Man, that's a tough one. Here we go. They're so perfect. I mean, how do we pick between the two, you know? They worship the Mother Maker herself, the universe. The Builders created these aggressive systems to direct, shape, and control the very structure of space and time. So they think they're the shit. there are two types of builders, the creators and Bob the Builders. No, there's creators and then the engineers. They seeded worlds for billions of years and directed the evolution of civilization. I mean, I get it, you're cool, you're old, you think y'all are the best, you're not perfect though, okay? Spoiler alert, you look like bugs. Huh? You guys look like Ultron if he was covered in cow
Number 7. Immortal Abomination. Immortal Abomination is the devastating monster that first appeared in Immortal Hulk issue 18. He appears to be genetic material belonging to Emil Blonsky spliced with that of Rick Jones, which gives us a really messed up version of Rick with 2 heads in a monster body. This version of Rick Jones and Abomination is also referred to as Subject B. Eventually he was put down later on in Immortal Hulk, but he is a horrifying, powerful, and emotionally painful creature for the Hulk to come up against, especially considering how close he and Rick Jones were. This version of Abomination, it should be noted, is different from the Abomination that we later come to know originally as General Reginald Fortean. The General Fortean version of Abomination first appeared in issue 19 of the Immortal Hulk series.
Number 6. Deadpool Corps. Making their debut in 2010, Deadpool Corps are, well, they're a team of Deadpools, as you would have guessed. Their first issue, Prelude to Deadpool Corps issue 1, they are founded by Earth 616 Deadpool after the Contemplator chose him to be the one to stop this cosmic entity, the Awareness. Super aware. The Awareness does this really neat thing where it devours the multiverse consciousness. Awesome. The Deadpool Corps have a unique mind that makes them immune to it, and they ride in style, using the B. Arthur as means of transportation, which is not a bad ride at all. I mean, I'd pull up at that. Let's go. The Deadpool Corps joined forces after Dreadpool formed an evil version of the Corps. Then, of course, head out to, massacre every version of himself in the multiverse. And the Deadpool Corps were short-lived, but as usual, a lot of bloody disgusting fun. Number 5, Joker. This one is super recent. I did say spoilers at the beginning of this video. You were warned. Warned, I tell you. So in Batman Joker War, the Joker appears to be wearing a bat suit. Yeah, and it's pretty bad looking too. I mean, come on. He's got the smile across his chest, they got the ha-ha-ha's written on the side, and to top it all off, he's even sporting the purple cape. It's amazing. So Batman had no idea that this is what he would find. I mean, first a dead Alfred greeting him, and then now a Joker in a bat suit. Get me out of this nightmare, what is going on? So how did this even come about? While Punchline and Joker's goons turned Gotham into a flaming death zone, like I mentioned earlier, the Joker was busy going after Wayne's fortunes. And I loved seeing this version of the Joker as well, like going after Wayne's money right off the bat, pun intended, even confirming his own actions by saying, you know what, I'm going against my own brand on this one. It's just fun. And we also saw similar looking suits back before Suicide Squad even came out, and like promo material and stuff. And it got us pretty hyped up. Me and my friends were talking about it. Yet it never happened. A lot of those things just didn't happen in that movie, eh? Number 4, Detroit Steel. Making his debut in Invincible Iron Man Volume 2, Issue 25, we have another big badass suit guy, Doug Johnson III. A former army soldier who ended up working for Hammer Industries. He was the pilot rocking the big bad America suit. Everybody had thought that Doug was dead. And usually when this happens, it's either awful or it works out in your favor. I know from experience, So Mock, breaker of faith, turned him into stone during conflict. Then when good guy Odin restored everybody, he was of course one of them. His family, the army, and Hammer Industries still thought that he was dead though. So he decided to use this in his favor. He got his passport, returned to America, and kidnapped Sasha Hammer in order to get the Detroit Steel armor back in his hands. Justine Hammer was on board with this whole plan. Obviously, she was going to blow up the armor as soon as she got the chance, right? Well, Dougie Johnny III was already way ahead of the game. He had hacked Hammer's systems earlier so that it had no effect on him, which is not a bad idea at all.
Number 3, Mutant Trauma Support Group. The Mutant Trauma Support Group is a new group with an age-old message to deliver to all humans who hate mutants. You are not alone. The group offers support without judgment to those who have been wronged or felt like they have been wronged by mutants. They offer no judgment, only support. No hate speech or degrading comments are allowed in the community unless directed towards mutants. The group appears to have all their revenge missions and anti-mutant gatherings organized via an online community, possibly via a social media channel or some kind of exclusive forum. They first appeared in 2020's Wolverine in issue number 4, where they targeted, you guessed it, Wolverine. Although they had their plans of vengeance cut short by an unexpected guest, it's likely that there are many more members of the group that we could run into in the future.
Number 2, Evil Deadpool. Making his first appearance appearance in Deadpool Volume 2, Issue 44, Evil Deadpool is somebody I think we're gonna see pretty shortly on the big screen. Yes, of course, I have a theory here. So the origins of Evil Deadpool are pretty wild. So Ella Whitby, who we all remember as the British psychiatrist who's obsessed with the loudmouth, but just how obsessed you ask? Well, I mean, she collects body parts from Wade Wilson and then leaves them in her freezer, right next to the ice packs and frozen pizzas, of course. So when Deadpool found this cool box of yuck, he tossed the parts in a dumpster. Now, Wade's healing factor is so good. How good is it, Taylor? Well, they all formed together and grew back. Ugh, imagine the smell. He ended up stealing a private jet and traveled to the States, where he ran into his other half, literally. The tiny legs part in Deadpool 2 was great and super funny, but what's up with his second half? Are they growing another Deadpool? I sure hope so. The evil twin thing seems to be working well. We'll watch 1,000 of those all day, every day.
Number 1, Solemn. Solemn is one of the champions fighting on the side of Arakko during the Ten of Swords event. Initially, we were introduced to him in 2020's Wolverine in issue 6, where he appeared as the perfect match for Wolverine. But although we've seen them dance around one another and even team up to take on a demon horde in hell, we still have yet to see these two battle one another. The reason why they seem so appropriately matched? Solemn is an Iraqi mutant with adamantium skin, meaning he, in comparison to Wolverine's adamantium skeleton, is on the same level of durability. As far as we know, he doesn't possess Wolverine's advanced healing factor though, but he is known for being a smooth talker, and both himself and Wolverine each possess a Muramasa blade, meaning that they would be easily able to slice each other up with their swords. Because, you know, Muramasa cut through anything. Also take your powers away. Number 5, Galactus. One villain who recently got a very mummy-inspired looking makeover was Galactus during his time in Thor's latest series as written by Donny Cates. Here in the first arc of the 2020 Thor series, referred to as Volume 6 overall of Thor, Thor takes on the immensely powerful cosmic entity known as the Black Winter. Because the Black Winter is so powerful, Thor is forced to team up with Galactus to defeat it. Unfortunately, he also learns that Galactus is actually kind of a herald for the Black Winter. FYI, that is just how powerful of a force the Black Winter is. He has Galactus as a herald. After devouring 5 planets to bolster his own power, Galactus has this power stripped from him by Thor upon this revelation. Thor leaves Galactus drained of the power cosmic, wrinkled, and de-armored, even taking Galactus's helmet as a trophy, using it as the entrance to his throne room. So while you might have recognized him previously, Galactus then got super upgraded and now is very mummified and also very dead. Oof. Number 4, Onslaught. Onslaught initially was a villain with a mysterious background. Despite the fact the powerful villain looked a ton like Magneto and seemed to pack a psionic powerhouse of abilities that echoed an evil Professor X, the character's true identity as really both of those mutants wouldn't be confirmed till after his initial appearance. When Onslaught appeared again, it was in a similar vein, and while the symbol of Onslaught might be similar, this time around when it came to the character's identity, they were even less recognizable, as it was explained that basically all the mutants of Krakoa were, in a way, Onslaught, and that Onslaught was able to exist through their constant resurrections. So while you might recognize the look of Onslaught when they returned, their true identity was even more of a mystery than the first time around. And their final form that we saw during X-Men The Onslaught Revelation was pretty wild as well, getting a bit of an update to match even the current character designs of what an amalgamated Charles and Eric would look like currently. I like that that version of Onslaught has like the black suit now, the tight black suit that Charles wears. It's a look. Number 3, One Below All. I think one of the biggest revelations of modern comics was learning that even a being as good as the One Above All, who is basically considered to be like Marvel God, has a dark side. The One Below All ended up being a major villain in the Immortal Hulk series, and we later learned that their power actually came from one of the most divine and good beings in the Marvel universe, the One Above All. The One Below All is like the Hulk for the One Above All. In other words, their darker and much more destructive other half. So while you might know the One Above All and you might know the One Below All, I bet you'd be surprised to learn that they were actually directly connected to one another. They can't exist without the other, especially given how different in appearance and alignment they both are. But this revelation was also super powerful and fitting for a series that was really all about forgiving and reconciling the darker side of the Hulk, the Hulks, and ultimately of humanity and our own individual selves. After all, we all have like a little bit of a Hulk side to us. Number 2, Killmonger. If you go on far enough back, Eric Killmonger easily becomes one of Marvel's villains you would not soon recognize. And that goes both ways. Whether we're talking about more recent fans looking back in comic history to his first appearance in Jungle Action, volume number 2, or whether we're talking about his initial fans looking at his modern MCU adaptation and comic redesign, which obviously takes inspiration from the MCU version of Eric. Killmonger made his first appearance in the second volume of Jungle Action from the 1970s in issue number 6, and even from that front cover, he just looks like really different. Here, Eric does not sport any self-created bodily scars marking his kills, but instead comes with a lot of spiky accessories, including what appears to be a spike belt, which he uses as a weapon to fight against his foe and his rival, Black Panther. All the spikes. Now he's got scars, but back then he had spikes. Number 1, the leader. I doubt after all this time if the leader even really recognizes himself, considering what he looks like now. Following the events of Immortal Hulk, the leader is left no longer a supervillain, but just a guy. Throughout the course of the series, we saw the leader only grow more evil and more powerful, it seemed. He was eventually basically influenced or possessed by the one below all, the most powerful of all Hulk-related baddies, and possibly the baddest of the bad just in general. However, after the two beings were separated from one another, Stearns was left as just a man, returned to normal. The Hulk decided to forgive the leader, and he returned back to the Earth with all the other Hulks and Bruce Banner. It's been a long time, but Sam Stearns is no longer the leader, at least not currently in the comics. I mean, he could return to being the leader at some point. Instead, Samuel Stearns is just Samuel Stearns.
Kicking off the list at number 10, we have Erica Manson, aka Marionette. She made her comic book debut just 2 years ago in Doomsday Clock issue 1. Her and her father moved to the United States and opened up a puppet shop across the street from Maze Glass, which eventually led her to meet Marcos Maze, who would soon become her husband, but I'll get into that a little bit later. They started, of course, as best friends, while Marco's stepfather thought that she was a bad influence. So Marco ended up saving Erica from some bullies, and Erica's father committed suicide after corrupt police officers were extorting money out of him at his puppet shop. Now, of course, this already sounds like a villain origin story, but it gets worse. So Erica ended up getting payback on the policeman while, of course, becoming the alternate persona, Marionette, with her trusty lover sidekick, Mime, aka Marcos Maze, who I mentioned earlier. I love this duo, honestly. Like, the vibe reminds me of, like, from Baby Driver, where you have Buddy and Darling. A lot of love and violence, just a hot mix. And before we head over to number 9, guys, if you could just give this video a thumbs up and like this video, it goes a long way over here at the studio. You guys rock, thank you. Now back to some more villains. And number 9, the Underbroker, not to be confused with the Underminer from Incredibles. So Harlan Graves, aka the Underbroker, is a businessman and lawyer located in, of course, Gotham City, who runs a bank for criminals. The Underbroker, of course, wears a fancy suit and a mask. I mean, he looks ready to go to the club, and he also looks ready to crunch some numbers. Love the red and black combo. Slick. He's a broker for criminals, so he would help them store cash in hedge funds. And he's actually so good at his job that the Caped Crusader doesn't even know about his secret organization he calls the Underbrokerage. Great name. He actually helped Catwoman transfer Batman's money to her account, but it was later revealed that he was just getting the account for the Joker. Super smart, super evil, and super handsome. Gotta love it. He made his debut in Batman Volume 3, issue 92. So if you want to check him out for yourself, you know where to look. And number 8, Barbados. Also referred to as the Bat God, not Rap God. And he resides in the Dark Multiverse. So, the World Forger, of course, was set to watch over the vast universes, and while some of them held up, there are just some worlds that were just naturally unstable. So, what next? Well, they send a dragon named Barbados to destroy it. That way the energy can then return to the Forge. Now, sometimes you like your job a little bit too much, and this was the case for the Bat God. See, he ended up killing his master and then had a real taste for destruction, thus corrupting the Forge of Worlds. So now, with Barbados not destroying these worlds and sending that energy back, these worlds ended up becoming part of the Dark Universe. His journey begins with Dark Days, The Casting, issue 1.
Number 7, Perpetua. Perpetua is an old evil, but one that we didn't know of in the comics until 2018 when she was first introduced in Justice League Volume 4, issue 8. Perpetua quickly became known as one of the greatest evils the universe, or multiverse really, had ever known. She was the creator basically of all things, and the mother to the Anti-Monitor, World Forger, and Over-Monitor. Billions of years ago, she was betrayed by her own children and trapped in the Source Wall, along with her devastating and deadly creatures, the Apex Predators, a vicious combination of Martians and humans. Yeah, she really old. Perpetua was the one ultimately responsible for the crisis in the DC universe, as it was her whisperings from within the Source Wall that brought them about. The energy allowed her prison to weaken, cracking a little more each time there was a crisis, which was how Perpetua planned to escape. She was eventually freed when the Source Wall broke as a result of Barbatos and the Batman Who Laughs actions, allowing her to once more wreak havoc on the world and earn back her power so she might rebuild the universe again in her own horrifying image.
And number 6, Daniel West, Reverse Flash. Making his first appearance in the Flash Volume 40, issue 0, Daniel West is a classic speedster. His costume is the first thing you notice when looking at this version of the Reverse Flash. His suit is made partially from the monorail that he crashed into, so it acts like an armor around him, which is super cool looking. It was merged to him. So after an accident where you get super speed, becoming a supervillain isn't too hard of a lane to slip into, especially when your mother dies while giving birth to you and your father is an aggressive alcoholic. Yeah, Daniel's upbringing is super tragic, so he uses the Speed Force in attempts to go back in time and prevent this from happening at all costs. So if anybody has to die in the meantime, so be it. His goal is to take out other speedsters and use their Speed Force to help him achieve his goal. Sad times indeed.
Number 5, Orcus. If you didn't already know me to be a big Marvel X-Men fan, then this list should solidify that as a thing for you. Yes, it is definitely a thing. I love the X-Men. Orcus is the new big bad for mutant kind introduced originally in the House of X series. House of X and Powers of 10 were the series that launched into this new wonderful X-Men line with Jonathan Hickman at the head, Dawn of X. Orcus is designed to be kind of the ultimate mutant enemy. With mutants coming together and putting their differences aside, it also inspired their enemies, and even allies in some cases, to become wary of them and do pretty much the same. Orcus comprises multiple organizations, each comprising different percentages of the organization, including S.H.I.E.L.D., Sword, Alpha Flight, Hammer, Hydra, AIM, Armor, and Strike. When I did that, I almost lost my ring. Oh my goodness. Orcus's goal is to monitor and prevent the potential extinction of humans on the planet, and they see mutant evolution and advancement as a threat to that goal.
Number 4, Oblivion. Making his first appearance in Green Lantern New Guardians Annual Issue 2 back in 2014, Oblivion is made of Kyle Rayner's rage, fear, and anxiety. He's the physical form of all of those traits and even believes himself to be Kyle Rayner. He stayed in his apartment and even tricked Carol into thinking that he was the real deal. So he has powers that allow him to shapeshift, teleport, he can project vast amounts of energy that match a white lantern, and he can also create illusions of people and objects. So one day Oblivion teleported Carol and himself to Arizona, where he used his powers to alter all the people in the buildings there. He's kind of annoying like that, you know?
Number 3, Clown Hunter. Clown Hunter is just a kid who stepped up to the plate when it came to taking back Gotham during the Joker War. Seeing his neighborhood being ravaged and attacked by the Joker gang, and having lost his parents to the Joker, he was inspired to start cracking skulls, which is exactly what he did, defending the innocent with a baseball bat with a battering attached to it, to kill any clowns that crossed his path. His true name is Bao Pham, and at the end of the event, he was confronted by Batman himself, who suggested that he seek help and speak to a therapist. He also offered to mentor Clown Hunter, but warned him that he would not tolerate the teenage Bao killing anyone else, no matter their crime. Clown Hunter seemed interested in getting help, but only after his work was done. Clown Hunter first appeared in issue 96 of 2016's Batman.
And number 2, The Court of Owls. I mentioned them earlier, so I figured since they're going to be in the new Robert Pattinson Batman flick coming out in 2022, they're worth a bigger mention. So since the New 52, the Court of Owls have picked up steam. Created by Scott Snyder, this new secret society looks as cool as they are. They're an ancient group that has been secretly controlling Gotham for a while. Like a while. They even go back to some early Bruce Wayne days, hence them being part of the Matt Reeves Batman plot coming up. Their top assassin, of course, being the guy I mentioned earlier, Talon. So he ended up attacking him, and then Bruce decided to do some detective work, discovering the secret society. So he finds out that the Court of Owls actually has secret headquarters in every building made by the Wayne Trust. Sneaky, sneaky. Gotta love secret cults. And finally, number 1, Mr. Bloom. One of the coolest looking guys on this list, Mr. Bloom made his debut in 2015 in Batman Volume 2, issue 43. He began his journey by stealing high-tech seeds. Yep, you heard me, I said seeds. Makes sense why he's got the flower on his face. It goes well with the terrifying Slender Man look. I wonder what it smells like. Probably death, or daffodils, one of the two. So after he took these super seeds, he got some superpowers, super strength, elasticity, hence the lankiness, and he can project flames and ice from his hands. Pretty neat. So he decides to give these seeds to a select few who desire superpowers. The only cost? Their life. I think next year for Halloween, I'm gonna go as Mr. Bloom. Either him or Orlando Bloom. One of the Blooms for sure, I'm just not sure which one, you know?
Number 3, slide. A chemical engineer turned super thief decked out in a super slippery suit. All right, let's get it over with. Jalome Bleacher created a chemical coating that basically eliminated the friction between an object and any surface it came into contact with, which, not even joking here, that could be really, really useful. Like, good job, man. Too bad the company he worked for closed their R&D department and Jalome had to find a way to independently fund his project. Honestly, I would have just found another company who wanted to fund me, but then I wouldn't appear on a list of people you never heard of, and that is a goal of mine. He created a suit with the chemical and used his slippery abilities to rob banks and try to destroy his old boss's business. His only other notable mentions were his midlife crisis and his death in a side story of the Civil War event where he was shot in the back for refusing to side with crime boss Hammerhead. I guess you could say that they had some friction. Okay, I'm just gonna slide my way to the door. Number 2, Stilt Man. So long as I am the master of my stilts, I'm unbeatable. I'm completely invincible. Wilbur, just stop. Just stop, man. Despite being an adversary to both Daredevil and Spider-Man, Stilt-Man just couldn't seem to be taken seriously. I can't possibly imagine why. Oh wait, no, I can. It's the stilts. Yeah, it's the stilts. What's interesting is that if you go into his Marvel Wiki page, Stilt-Man actually has quite a long history, being involved in many storylines. And his stilts are actually pretty strong. At one point, the strength of them was able to plunge She-Hulk so far into the ground, she ended up in the subway. But then she beat him in a really embarrassing way. I mean, just look. His stilts could reach up to 290 feet though, which is actually kind of cool, I think. Number 1, Hypno Hustler. Okay, just look at this dazzling man. What an icon. The Hypno Hustler made his debut in the 80s, which I hope isn't a surprise to anyone. He uses a hypnotic guitar to hypnotize people, wears headphones that stop him from hypnotizing himself, and has boots that emit knockout gas and have retractable knives. What a combo! His story involves him performing at the nightclub Beyond Forever, where Peter Parker and pals just happen to be. Him and his band use their hypnotic grooves to hypnotize the crowd into giving up their goods. Peter Parker, being the hero, obviously knows what's going on and changes into his Spidey suit. During the fight, he realizes the headphones are the only thing keeping Hypno Hustler from hypnotizing himself, and Spider-Man removes them. That's it. Fight over.
Number 10, the Joker. In the Last Night on Earth series, we find Bruce Wayne at Arkham Asylum. Yeah, it's super sad and dark. He wakes up to discover that he has never, in fact, been Batman. Like when he goes to hug Alfred, the panel quickly cuts, and then Batman is like out in this random wasteland almost. And he has like this sort of asylum suit on with wavy pieces of white clothing that kind of blows behind him. It looks like Edward Scissorhands or like a mummy. It's kind of cool. But he wakes up in this desert, and in the midst of all this confusion, he sees a lantern. Not like a lantern, like an actual lantern, you know? And what's in the lantern, you might be thinking? Just the Joker's head. That's right, so Batman and Noggin, as he refers to it. Yeah, so this Joker has quips. It kind of feels like Shrek a little bit. Now hear me out. We have Batman just trying to figure this whole ordeal out, and he's just trying to figure out pieces along the way, and then we have this crazy sidekick who just loves to talk. The writers really amped it up in issue number 3 of The Last Night on Earth. So during the duo's travels, Joker mentions, in a jokingly manner of course, that he wanted to be Batman's next Robin, Could you imagine that? Well, yeah, you can because it happens. And it's awesome, too. So basically, you take this Lantern Joker's head and mix it in with Tim Drake's Mech Robin suit that he no longer needs, and bam, you have the new Robin. He's an actual sidekick in this too, like he almost dies trying to save Bruce from Omega. The Last Night on Earth. Go check it out right now. Well, after the video, but yeah. Number 9, Mr. Freeze. Making his debut back in Batman Volume 2, Issue 1, Mr. Freeze is an iconic Batman villain, and partially because I think the best actor in the world played him in Batman and Robin. That's right, I'm talking about our boy Arnold. Mr. Freeze's biology was altered after being bathed in chirochemicals, so his body heat is only that of 23 degrees Fahrenheit. So anything he touches will also freeze. Now, of course, this also slows his aging down drastically. He wears a Cairo suit to help keep his body temperature below freezing. That is, until a recent Detective Comics issue 1012. Nanotech saves the day. That's right, for years Mr. Freeze has been working with nanotech over and over again until finally he can now survive without the use of his helmet. I mean, as cool as the helmet did look, I think the main Avatar Blue Man Group kind of look suits him, you know? What do you guys think? Helmet? On? Off? I think off. Number 8, Scarecrow. Okay, this next one's for the nerds who also like to game out. Jonathan Crane, aka Scarecrow, is one of my favorite villains, hands down. After making his first appearance in World's Finest Comics, issue 3, and also portrayed by Cillian Murphy in the Nolan trilogy, Scarecrow is known to use fear as a main weapon, which is pretty sick. So we see this in Batman Begins, but we really see the full effects of where he can go mentally, specifically in the game Arkham Asylum. I mean, he's insanely scary and quite the big deal. He almost acted like Freddy Krueger in some ways. Like one minute you'll be walking around in the middle of a mission, maybe you're scanning something, and then all of a sudden the camera starts to change a bit, and then the game changes, and all of a sudden you're in this crazy nightmare. And it's so smooth the way it happens that you get kind of concerned, someone who's actually playing it. I also love seeing this type of Scarecrow in a video game because it made me feel like I was part of it. Like literally I was part of the action. You feel like a detective in the entire game series, it's done so well, but then you also feel pretty scared when you're not sure if what you're seeing is supposed to happen in the game. Some parts I swear my game was glitching. Amazing series if you haven't played it yet.
Number 7, Hydra Supreme. Hydra Supreme was the name Captain America took when he became evil. He only became evil, of course, because Kobik, the cosmic cube in the form of a little girl, altered reality to make him a secret sleeper agent for Hydra throughout his history. Reality was then changed so that every action Captain America, Steve Rogers, had taken up to this point was all part of a long con to take over the United States of America after gaining their trust implicitly before revealing his true colors. Fortunately, the original Captain America still existed within the cosmic cube, or the shards of it, and once released was able to fight against and defeat his evil alternate reality counterpart. Woohoo! But also not woohoo if you were a fan of Hydra Supreme.
Number 6, Killer Croc. AKA Waylon Jones, he made his first debut in Batman number 357. We saw him in Suicide Squad and he looked pretty bad. It's kind of like a dinosaur, or like the lizard from Amazing Spider-Man, whatever. We don't talk about that movie in here. We're talking about DC, we're not talking about them. So the introduction of his character in Suicide Squad actually got me pretty pumped. And then the rest of the movie happened, so short-lived to say the least. His OG look wasn't nearly as menacing though. I mean, see, from his debut back in 1983, he looked like a guy. A strange looking guy, but still more human than his current look nonetheless. Now at this point, he was just a criminal with a scaly skin disease, where now he looks like a monster, donning the full-on Croc monster look. And if you want to see these big changes for yourself, make sure you check out Batman Hush Killer Croc, where he looks arguably the most bad. There's one panel where he's just towering over Catwoman and he's like, I want my money! And she's like, alright man, chill out. I would my leather pants. Very fast.
Number 5, Black Winter. Black Winter was actually an old villain sort of made new and shiny again. Originally we came to know this cosmic evil constant as the Creeping Plague, although I do like the name Black Winter better than Creeping Plague. It was credited with being the entity responsible for the death of the cosmos prior to its rebirth when Galen was first transformed into the being known as Galactus. The Black Winter was meant to be this massive, unstoppable eldritch villain, though shortly after its full appearance in Thor issue number 4 from 2020, it was swiftly defeated 2 issues later. It's not so unstoppable. Though it did require the power of Galactus, which Thor wielded in order to destroy the Black Winter, getting a brief glimpse of his possibly perilous future in its last falling snowflake. So yeah, it did require a lot of power, I guess, to take it out, but still, it was only 2 issues. They were like, this thing, it's massive, and defeated, no props. Oh yeah, the Black Winter is also kind of like an eldritch storm that basically erases the existence of all it comes into contact with, and it comes with bonus visions of your own destruction.
Number 4. Clayface. Basil Carlo, aka Clayface, made his first debut back in 1940 in Detective Comics numero 40. He was an actor that had gone a touch crazy when a remake of his classic movie was released with a new actor. Kind of like what we get to see every other month. So he decided to adopt this persona of an old movie villain, Clayface. And this guy's pretty neat. He can mimic anybody just by getting a smidgen of DNA. He can change the shape, the size of his body. Solid actor, eh? So method. Cut to Detective Comics Volume 1, Issue 934. Clayface had escaped Arkham Asylum. Why, you ask? To go to the movies. Yep, he went to go see himself on the big screen. To see himself. I don't watch myself really. I watch a few of these, but too scared. So as the crowd of moviegoers obviously runs out in a frenzy, Clayface is left sitting there wide-eyed, just wondering what could have been, watching his own performance. So Batman and Batgirl enter the theater, shocked that this is the reason he escaped. All he wants in this moment is just to watch the 84-minute movie and feel good again, to remind him who he was once. Batman responds with, well, what if I could give you more than that? What's the catch, he answers? Well, the catch is, says Batgirl, you're gonna have to do everything we say. And poof, we have Clayface on the home team. Let's go.
Number 3. Iska the Unbeaten. Iska is the sister of Genesis, and as such is Apocalypse's sister-in-law. She is a mutant from Morocco who's fighting against our mutant heroes of Krakoa in the Otherworld tournament, intending to settle their dispute as decided by Opal Luna Saturnine, the omniversal magistrates of the Starlight Citadel, as seen in the current X-Men event 10 of Swords. Iska's mutant power is an epic one. She can never be beaten. Krakoan mutants Magic and Cable both set to testing her power prior to the tournament's start at a great feast that was held the evening before, finding them to be quite impressive. They wondered what would happen if she were to face their lucky friend Domino, and Iska assured them that whoever this Domino was, she would certainly lose. And I gotta say, after seeing Iska go to work, I think I would agree. Iska's gonna probably win in a fight against Domino. Let me know what you think about that.
Number 2. Catwoman. Making her first debut in Batman number 1, Selena Kyle looked a bit different from the start, to say the least. We've seen numerous actors play the iconic jewel thief, from Michelle Pfeiffer, or as I said growing up, Michelle Pfeiffer, to Zoe Kravitz, set to play her in the upcoming Batman flick with Pattinson. So we know the look by now. All black, slick, couple of clips, some eyebrow raises. She kicks. This look was never the case, however. In the first issue she appeared in, she was actually referred to as the Cat, simply put. And at this time her outfit looked just a bit more lame, if I can say. She kind of looked like Doctor Strange in a weird way. The all yellow dress, the red cape, but the best part, she had a realistic fur mask. It wasn't until 1946 until her mask was changed to a more fitting look. Still not quite what we're used to, but it's a step in the right direction, that's for sure. Then in the 50s, she was deemed more of a sidekick to Batman rather than a villain. And finally, number 1, the Joker, Death of the Family. This next one is wild. And yes, the Joker was on this list more than once. Well, because I wrote it, okay? That's it. We go back to 2012, Batman Volume 2, Issue 13. Now, the Joker at this point had not been in Gotham City for about a year now. He originally got captured and sent to Arkham Asylum, but that was all part of his plan. So while he was in there, he made a meeting with Dollmaker, where they cut off Joker's face, and then the Joker escaped without a face. So a year later, the Joker returned to Gotham, still without a face, kills some cops, all Joker-like, still without a face, and then he steals his own face out of the evidence room, just slaps it on. He kind of has to tie it. It's really gross. Imagine looking around and then you just see your own face. That's it. So he masks up, or faces up, whatever you want to call it, and then he captures Alfred. Wild. The look of this mask though, oh, it's so loose and gross, it looks like baloney. You gotta love it.
Coming in at number 10, we have Eclipso, the alleged former Wrath of God. A supernatural agent of chaos with his face permanently in the shade of a constant eclipse, Eclipso claimed to be the one who carried out the biblical flood of Noah's Ark, and that he was replaced in his position as the physical embodiment of God's wrath by the Spectre, because Eclipso was just too violent and angry for the role. Older than almost every other being on Earth, Eclipso has fought many heroes over the years, and even though he no longer possesses the power of a full god, he is still an extremely dangerous magical being, and who knows what he'll do next to try and regain his power.
Number 9. Haziral. Haziral is the demon who possesses the leader of the Rat Queens, Hannah. Hannah is an elven necromancer in the series whose very existence as well as the type of magic she practiced made her controversial while growing up. As such, she ends up making a pact with the demon Haziral to get access to magic so that she can pass her classes at Mage U. This prompts her to grow horns and also makes her indebted and permanently bonded to the demon. Using such dark magic has consequences, of course, and when she taps into it, it can cause Hannah to go kind of into a pretty crazy frenzy, losing control over herself as her darker side and the demon within her takes over. In Rat Queens, Hannah was prompted to use this power again to save her friends and fellow Rat Queens after years of resisting the temptation of said demonic power. Unfortunately, this also meant she would have to confront Haziral after years of staving off the demon's power and influence. In a way, Haziral is also like a symbol for Hannah's own inner demons, though he is himself literally a demon with his own wants and desires. Both a symbol and an actual demon. Mainly, he loves Hannah and he wants to continue to be as close to her at any cost. Which is obviously not very good for her, but Hannah also has a lot of shit that she needs to work out, so yeah.
And it ain't Count Nefaria. While Count Nefaria wasn't purely evil at first, his desire for more wealth and power is ultimately his downfall, and he's very nefarious. He has been around for years and years, fighting almost every single Avenger he can think of. He also encountered Moon Knight after Mark Spector moved to LA and joined the West Coast Avengers, primarily becoming his villain. Count Nefaria is immortal and has an unfathomably strong healing factor, because, you know, he's immortal. He received energy projection from the Living Laser, strength from Power Man, and speed from Whirlwind, all amplified 100 times. He can lift well over 100 tons, fly over 5,000 miles per hour, teleport, leech another person's energy, and so much more. However, it's likely that if you are a fan of Moon Knight, you knew about this guy, so he's not very high on the list. But honestly, not having known much about Moon Knight before this list, aside from he looks freaking awesome, all these villains are pretty new to me, so it's pretty cool getting to see all the characters that this guy has faced, and hopefully you at least hear about a few that you didn't know about. But no complaining if you're a Moon Knight superfan, okay? That's not allowed. That's cheating.
Coming in at number 7, we have the Reverse Flash. A walking time paradox, the Reverse Flash hails from a 25th century where the Flash is remembered as one of the greatest heroes of all time. Becoming obsessed with Barry Allen, the Reverse Flash was eventually able to gain control of the negative speed force and made it his life's goal to replace and destroy Barry after realizing he was destined to be defeated by him. Capable of traveling through time, Reverse Flash would wind up being responsible for nearly every bad thing that ever happened in Barry's life, raising a whole lot of questions about cause and effect and all sorts of timey-wimey weirdness, but mainly going to show that he's a dangerous and unpredictable villain.
And at 6, Death. We all love a good rendition of death, right? Of course we do, that's like the foundation of any good comic storyline. Well, in East of West, the whole story is about death, with this version of the Horseman being the protagonist of the series. And not only is he the Horseman of Death, but they're actually a horseman as well, considering how East of West is Wild West themed. However, this time around, Death, formerly of the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse, fell in love with someone named Xyloin, something like that. I probably butchered it, but oh well. And then had a son with her, which is a whole other can of worms. Presumably killed by Bel Solomon of the Chosen though. He survived with the help of Wolf and Crow. Since then, the White Horseman embarked on a quest for revenge over his wife and son. And in the most recent incarnation, Death possessed skin that was jet black instead of the pure white skin that he has now. He was also the only horseman who didn't get a gender change in the new reincarnation. Alright, I mean it's Death, so Death is genderless. But I mean, he may be good in the story though, but I think it's safe to say that Death before this series was a pretty, well, like, death-loving guy. Self-love. Halfway through into number 5, Shadow Knight. Shadow Knight's real name is Randall Spector, Mark's younger brother. He was envious of Mark his entire life, which turned him into a horrible criminal. There was a murderer on the streets killing nurses called the Hatchet Man, so Moon Knight used his girlfriend Marlene as like bait to catch the killer. The plan worked, but Marlene perished. Yeah, and to make matters even worse, the Hatchet Man was revealed to be Randall. Randall later joined the cult of Khonshu, which ultimately resulted in him receiving the same powers as his brother Mark. However, he ended up choosing to use them for evil, donning the pseudonym Shadow Knight. Because, you know, every character needs to have a reverse version of themselves. Reverse Flash, Dark Archer, Bizarro. It was devastating for Mark to fight his brother and ultimately kill him by slitting his throat with a throwing crescent. Yeah, it doesn't get much worse than that, especially when you learn that Mark tried protecting Randall their entire lives. But then again, he killed your girlfriend, so...
Coming in at number 4, we have the Emperor of Shadow, aka another evil Bruce Wayne from the Dark Multiverse. In a very recent one-off issue entitled Batman/Superman Authority Special, Batman discovers a reality from the Dark Multiverse where Ra's al Ghul's plan to dominate humanity has come to pass, and the League of Shadows has become an Empire of Shadows, controlling the entire world. To make matters worse, the leader of this empire is a Bruce Wayne who gave in to Ra's al Ghul's teachings and embraced his position as the world's new emperor. While Batman and Superman were eventually able to destroy the link between this world and the regular DC universe in order to prevent an invasion, this twisted version of Bruce Wayne is still out there, likely biding his time until the next opportunity arises for the Dark Multiverse to attack the regular multiverse once more.
Number 3, Dracula. I think Dracula is a really important villain of Vampirella's to talk about since he also just surprisingly married her. In Priest's Vampirella series, he had these two longtime enemies tie the knot recently, shaking things up completely. I know when I heard about this going down, I was like, what? Actually, a lot of Priest's run has been shaking up the status quo and the world of Vampirella in interesting, exciting, and of course, bloody ways. Of course, the version of Dracula we see in this series isn't the conventional one that you're used to seeing when it comes to Vampirella's comics. This version of Dracula is a reincarnation that is attempting to cheat fate by marrying Vampy, thereby altering his destiny and hopefully saving his life. For years in the comics though, Vampirella's nemesis Drac was often posed as the lord of a bunch of evil vampires, with all the vampires kind of coming from his blood lineage being corrupt in some way. It was like he only made bad vampires. That was like a whole thing. Dracula has also been shown in the past to be an exiled vampire from the planet Draculon, Vampirella's home world. Of course, Dynamite isn't the only publisher to feature Dracula. While we might be focusing on the Vampy version and his long history there, Dracula has also appeared throughout multiple different series spanning across various different publishers. And if you're like, man, but I already knew about Dracula, I don't know if you knew about his connection to Vampirella, but now you do! Yay!
Penultimately, in at number 2, Cactus. Sometimes a name is just a name. It can have meaning or it could just be something cool that the guy thought of that ended up kind of making sense. Other times names are extremely direct and are probably too on point. That's the case with Cactus, who is exactly what he sounds like and nothing more. Created by Dominus, he's been a villain of the West Coast Avengers and Moon Knight on various occasions. Punching him definitely stings, but beyond that it doesn't take all that much to break him or chop him up because, you know, he's a cactus, which has actually happened before, though he can regenerate lost limbs, which I don't know if cactuses can do or cacti can do, but yeah, he's without a doubt one of the lamest villains in the Marvel Universe, but in my opinion, that makes him one of the coolest. This guy is literally a cactus, and that's hilarious. A couple years ago, the girl I was with at the time and I came up with a superhero that we called Cact Guy, who was basically in essence Cactus, and we didn't know that it was actually a thing, but it's funny to me that someone actually made this and then put it in the goddamn Marvel Universe. That's hilarious, that's amazing, and Cactus is my new favorite villain ever because of that. Hashtag Cactus in the MCU.
And finally, coming in at number 1, we have Perpetua, the dark goddess of the multiverse. The DC multiverse has faced many threats over the course of its existence, with the highest stakes being reserved for events labeled as a crisis. But beyond the scope of even the Crisis on Infinite Earths is Perpetua, the mother of the Anti-Monitor and a being that, until recently, was locked behind the Source Wall at the very edge of the DC universe. The creator of every story we've ever been told throughout all of DC Comics, Perpetua altered and manipulated the multiverse for her own purposes and to thwart the mysterious hands that seem to be even beyond her own power level. We still don't know everything there is to know about Perpetua, even if she was eventually able to have her plans stopped, and the sheer scale of her ambitions makes her the most mysterious DC villain of all.